Welcome to Daily Scripture Reading. I do not own the rights to this music. 2 Samuel chapter 18. This is the Amplified Version. Absalom's death. David numbered the men who were with him and set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. Then David sent the army out, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third under the command of Ittai, the Gittite. And the king said to the men, I myself will certainly go out to fight with you. But the men said, You should not go out to battle with us, for if in fact we retreat, they will not care about us. Even if half of us died, they will not care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us. So now it is better that you be ready to help us from the city of Mahanaim. Then the king said to them, I will do whatever seems best to you. So the king stood beside the gate of Mahanaim, and all the army went out in groups of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the men heard when the king gave orders to all the commanders about Absalom. So the men went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was fought in the forest of Ephraim. The men of Israel who supported Absalom were defeated there by the men of David, and a great slaughter took place there that day, 20,000 men. For the battle there was spread out over the surface of the entire countryside, and the hazards of the forest devoured more men that day than did the sword. Now Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule went under the thick branches of a massive tree, and his head was caught in the thick branches of the tree, and he was left hanging in mid-air between heaven and earth, while the mule that had been under him kept going. A certain man saw it and informed Joab, saying, I saw Absalom hanging in a tree. Joab said to the man who informed him, You saw him. Why then did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. The man told Joab, Even if I were to feel the weight of 1,000 pieces of silver in my hands, I will not put out my hand against the king's son. For we all heard the king command you, Abishai and Ittai, saying, Protect the young man Absalom for my sake. Otherwise, if I had acted treacherously against his life, for nothing is hidden from the king, you yourself would have taken sides against me. Joab said, I will not waste time with you. So he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was still alive and caught in the midst of the tree. And 10 young men, Joab's armor-bearers, surrounded and struck Absalom and killed him. Then Joab blew the trumpet to signal the end of the combat, and the men returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held them back. They took down the body of Absalom and threw him into a deep pit in the forest, and set up a huge mound of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, everyone to his own tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up for himself a memorial pillar, which is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He named the memorial pillar after himself, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. David is grief-stricken. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, Let me run and bring the king news that the Lord has vindicated him by rescuing him from the power of his enemies. But Joab told him, You are not the man to carry news to King David today, but you shall carry news another day. On this day you shall carry no news, because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to the Cushite Ethiopian, Go tell the king what you have seen. And the Cushite bowed to Joab and ran. Then Ahimaaz the son of Zadok said again to Joab, But whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. Joab said, Why should you run, my son, seeing you will have no messenger's reward for going, because you have only bad news? But whatever happens, let me run. So Joab said to him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain of the Jordan River and outran the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the two gates, and the lookout went up to the roof of the gate by the wall. And when he raised his eyes and looked, he saw a man running alone. The lookout called down and told the king. The king said, If he is alone, he has good news to tell. And he came nearer and nearer. Then the lookout saw another man running, and he called to the gatekeeper and said, Look, another man running alone. The king said, He also is bringing good news. The lookout said, I think the man is in front runs like Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. The king said, He is a good man and is coming with good news. And Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, All is well. And he bowed before the king with his face to the ground and said, Blessed be the Lord your God, who has handed over the men who lifted up their hands to fight against my lord the king. The king asked, Is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant and your servant, I saw a great turmoil, but I do not know what it was about. The king told him, Step aside, stand here. And he stepped aside and stood still. Behold, the Cushite Ethiopian arrived and said, Let my lord the king receive good news, for the Lord has vindicated you today by rescuing you from the power of all those who stood against you. The king asked the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom my son safe? The Cushite replied, May the enemies of my lord the king and all those who rise against you to do evil be dead like that young man is. The king was deeply moved and went to the upper room over the gate and wept in sorrow. And this is what he said as he walked, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, how I wish that I had died instead of you. O Absalom, my son, my son. The end. God bless you and thank you for joining me today.